Ladies and gentlemen, now we all have dreams. Some are small, some are grand, but what I want to focus on today are the big dreams, the ones that make us nervous, the ones that scare us, the ones that at times seem impossible. But let me tell you, it is these big dreams that have the potential to change our lives and the world around us. We all have moments in life when we stand at the edge of something great. It could be a new venture, a dream you've carried for years, or a chance to step into a life that aligns more closely with your truest self. These moments where the heart races and the stomach churns often bring with them a deep sense of fear. It's easy to believe that if we feel afraid, we're not ready. We think that courage must be the absence of fear. That somehow, if we're truly brave, we'll never experience that tightness in our chest, that hesitation in our thoughts, that gnawing worry at the back of our minds. But here's the truth: courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to move through it. When we face something that stretches us, something that demands us to step beyond our comfort zone, fear shows up. It's a natural response. It's a primal instinct that's built into the very fabric of who we are. Our brain, designed to protect us, sends signals that this moment is dangerous, that something might go wrong, that there are risks at play. And it's in these moments that many of us retreat. We shrink back, we hesitate, we doubt, we second guess. But what if I told you that fear is actually an invitation? What if fear could be something we lean into instead of something that paralyzes us? Fear has an interesting way of showing us that we're on the verge of something important. It's like a signpost that says you're on the right path. It's only when we stop running from it, when we stop pretending it's not there, that we can begin to harness its energy. Fear is a signal of growth. It's the body's way of saying you're about to push beyond what you've known, and that's exactly where you need to be. So instead of trying to quiet the fear, instead of wishing it away, what if we acknowledged it as a companion on the journey? It's not about eliminating it. Fear will always be with us as long as we live and dream, but we get to choose how we respond to it. True courage doesn't mean that we never feel fear. True courage is being willing to keep moving forward even when fear is present. It's about showing up in the face of the unknown, in the face of doubt, and doing it anyway. It's like standing at the foot of a mountain, knowing the climb will be difficult, but putting one foot in front of the other regardless of how steep or intimidating the path ahead seems. Think about the times in your life when you felt the fear the most. Maybe it was when you left a job to start your own business, or when you made the decision to go back to school in a new field, or when you decided to have a hard conversation that had the potential to change everything. You felt it in your gut, didn't you? The doubt, the questioning, the what if this doesn't work thoughts. It would have been so easy to stay where it was comfortable. It would have been so easy to say, this is good enough. This is safe. I don't need to take this risk. But something inside you, maybe it was a whisper, or maybe it was a roaring voice, told you that this was the moment. This was your opportunity to do something bigger. And even though the fear was there, you chose to take the step. You chose to act despite the uncertainty. That's courage. Courage is not about the absence of fear. It's about what we do with that fear. Sometimes moving through fear is an act of sheer determination. It's making the choice to show up every single day, even when we don't feel ready, even when we're not sure we're enough. It's the ability to continue when every instinct in our body wants us to run away. And let me tell you, fear can be loud. It can scream at us, filling our minds with all the worst case scenarios. It can make us believe that we're not capable, that we're not smart enough, that we don't have what it takes. It can convince us that failure is inevitable and that the pain of trying will outweigh the reward of succeeding. But here's the beauty of courage. It doesn't need to be loud. Courage is quieter. It's the gentle but persistent voice that says, I am moving forward anyway. Courage is the small step taken in the direction of your dreams, even when everything feels uncertain. It's the ability to keep going, even when the outcome is unclear. It's the knowledge that fear is part of the equation and that it's okay to feel it. Courage is the decision to move forward in the face of it. There's a myth that courage looks like bold action or fearless leaps. We see stories of people who make enormous changes in their lives and think that's what courage looks like. We imagine them walking into the unknown without any hesitation, without any of the fears or doubts we carry. But real courage, true courage, is in the small moments. It's in the daily decisions to show up, to be vulnerable, to be imperfect, to push through the discomfort, even when we don't feel like we have it all figured out. There's an elegance in the quiet moments of courage, in the stillness of deciding to stay the course. It's when we face the fear and chosen to let it sit beside us, to walk alongside us, but not to rule us. Courage doesn't mean we never doubt ourselves. It means we doubt ourselves, but we keep going anyway. Courage means that we don't let fear define our actions. We redefine fear. We take its power away by choosing to act in spite of it. And here's another thing. The more we move through our fear, the more we begin to see the other side of it. The more we face the discomfort, the more we realize that the thing we feared wasn't as terrifying as we thought. It wasn't as paralyzing. We begin to see that fear doesn't have to be a roadblock. It can be a signal that we are on the right path, that we are growing, and that we are becoming something more. Let me offer you an example from my own life. I remember standing at the threshold of a new project. It was one of those moments when everything felt like it was on the line. I was about to step into unfamiliar territory that required me to trust myself in ways I never had before. The fear crept in immediately. What if I fail? What if it's not good enough? What if no one believes in me? It was loud. It was relentless. And in that moment, I had a choice. I could back away, shrink back into the safety of the known, or I could take that first step and trust that moving through the fear would bring me closer to something bigger. I took the step. And yes, the fear didn't disappear. But something else happened. With each small action, with each decision to keep moving forward, the fear became quieter. It still showed up, but it didn't control me anymore. Instead, it was like a companion on the journey, reminding me that I was walking a path that mattered. I didn't have to be fearless to move forward. I just had to be willing to move with the fear, not away from it. In the journey toward our dreams, there's one quality that stands out as both the most intimidating and the most empowering: vulnerability. It's a word we often avoid, a feeling we try to shield ourselves from. In a world that celebrates strength, certainty, and control, vulnerability can feel like a weakness. It feels like exposure, like laying your bare self open for the world to see. It feels risky, scary, and let's be honest, uncomfortable. And yet, it is through vulnerability that we find our truest selves. And it is through vulnerability that we step into the fullest expression of our potential. Vulnerability is the birthplace of creativity, connection, and transformation. It's also where we find the courage to pursue our biggest dreams. The reason vulnerability is so powerful is because it allows us to be honest with ourselves and with others. It forces us to confront the places where we feel insecure, imperfect, or uncertain and still move forward. The very act of being vulnerable requires us to be present with our fears and doubts while also stepping into the unknown. It is a paradox. In the act of exposing ourselves to the world, we discover strength and resilience in ways we never imagined. Now, let's address something that many of us believe about vulnerability, that it's a sign of weakness. We've been taught both subtly and overtly that the strong, the successful, and the powerful are the ones who are stoic, unaffected, and unflinching. We've been conditioned to believe that we must project an image of invulnerability, as though we need to have it all together before we can move forward. We think that to pursue our dreams, we must appear perfect, capable, and always in control. But nothing could be further from the truth. The truth is that vulnerability is actually a superpower. It's the key to connection. It's the key to growth. And it's the key to creating a life and a future that we can truly be proud of. When we embrace vulnerability, we open ourselves up to the fullness of human experience, the highs, the lows, the messiness, the joy, the pain, the fear, and the triumph. And it's in that fullness that we begin to grow. Think about the times when you felt the most connected to others, whether it was a deep conversation with a friend, a collaboration with a colleague, or a moment of raw honesty with a loved one. What you probably remember most is not the perfect words or the perfectly curated version of yourself, but the moments when you were honest, when you let down your guard, when you allowed yourself to be seen not for your perfection, but for your authenticity. Those moments are when we truly connect with one another, and they're also the moments when we unlock the courage to step forward into the unknown. But here's the thing, vulnerability is not just about opening up to others, it's about opening up to ourselves. To dream big requires us to admit the areas of our lives where we're unsure, where we have no clear answers, and where we have to lean into uncertainty. It requires us to show up as we are imperfect, messy, uncertain, and still keep going. It requires us to put our ideas, our passions, and even our very selves out there, knowing that the act of doing so leaves us open to rejection, failure, and judgment. That's what makes it so powerful. Vulnerability is often seen as a risk because it involves being emotionally exposed. We fear rejection. We fear being judged. We fear that others will see us as weak or unworthy. And yet, these fears are often based on false beliefs. We live in a culture that prioritizes perfection and fear of failure. We're told to keep our emotions in check, to present a polished version of ourselves, and to hide our imperfections behind a facade. But if we're ever going to move toward our biggest dreams, we have to challenge this narrative. We have to stop pretending we have it all together, and instead embrace the messiness of being human. Vulnerability is not about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about showing up in the world with all your flaws, all your insecurities, and still daring to reach for something bigger than yourself. It's about saying, I'm not sure how this will turn out, but I'm willing to try. It's about believing in your worth enough to put your ideas, your dreams, and your heart out there, knowing that rejection or failure doesn't diminish who you are. It only serves to refine you. Perfectionism is often seen as a virtue in our society, a badge of honor that signifies high standards, discipline, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. We've been taught to believe that the more perfect we are, the more worthy we become. We assume that if we can eliminate flaws, imperfections, or mistakes from our work, our lives, and ourselves, we'll finally achieve success and happiness. But what if I told you that perfectionism is not your friend? In fact, perfectionism is often the very thing that holds us back from pursuing our biggest dreams, from living fully, and from achieving the success we truly want. Let me be clear, there is nothing wrong with striving to do your best. The pursuit of excellence, a commitment to growth, and the desire to improve are all good things. But perfectionism is different. It is the relentless, often paralyzing belief that you must meet an unattainably high standard, that failure is not an option, and that anything less than perfection is unacceptable. Perfectionism creates an environment where self-worth is contingent on flawless outcomes, and as a result, it breeds fear, self-doubt, and ultimately stagnation. Perfectionism is deeply rooted in fear. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of looking inadequate. The problem is that perfectionism often masquerades as a desire for success or high quality, when in reality, it's more about avoiding the discomfort that comes with vulnerability and imperfection. It tells us that if we can just get everything right, we will be safe from criticism, rejection, or disappointment. But the truth is, perfectionism is a cage. It keeps us locked in a cycle of overthinking, overworking, and self-criticism, leaving little room for growth, creativity, or the very action that leads to success. When we hold ourselves to impossibly high standards, we become paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes. We become afraid to try something new because we are afraid we won't get it perfect. We put off taking action because we feel that we aren't fully prepared, or that we need to have everything figured out before we can even begin. But perfectionism, in essence, prevents us from ever starting or moving forward at all. The result, we remain stuck, waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect conditions, all the while missing out on opportunities for growth and learning. One of the most insidious aspects of perfectionism is how it keeps us from truly connecting with ourselves and others. It creates a false narrative that in order to be loved, valued, or respected, we must present an image of flawlessness. We see this in the world of social media, where curated, polished versions of life dominate the conversation. We see it in our workplaces, where the desire to be the ideal employee or leader prevents us from sharing our true thoughts, opinions, and vulnerabilities. We see it in relationships, where fear of being imperfect causes us to hide parts of ourselves that we fear may not be good enough. But here's the thing, perfection is not real. It is an illusion that we create in our minds to protect ourselves from judgment or failure, but it never leads to fulfillment. Perfectionism keeps us disconnected from our authentic selves, always striving for an unattainable ideal, rather than embracing the beauty of being human, messy, imperfect, and ever evolving. Let me share a personal example. A few years ago, I was about to launch a new project, a creative endeavor that I had been dreaming of for months. But as the date for the launch drew nearer, I found myself paralyzed by fear. I would spend hours refining every detail of the project, obsessing over whether it was good enough. I kept thinking that it needed to be flawless in order to succeed. I feared that if it wasn't perfect, it would fail miserably, and I would be judged for it. I delayed the launch again and again, convinced that I needed just a little more time to get it right. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Waiting for perfection meant I was waiting forever. The longer I waited, the less I accomplished, and the more I doubted myself. Perfectionism kept me stuck in a loop of overthinking and self-criticism. And it wasn't until I realized that I didn't need to have everything perfect, that I didn't need to have it all figured out before I took the leap, that I was able to move forward. The moment I embraced imperfection, acknowledging that there would be bumps along the way, that mistakes would be made, and that I would learn as I went, I was finally able to move past the fear. The project wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was authentic. And in that authenticity, it resonated with people in a way I couldn't have anticipated. The truth is, waiting for perfection only holds us back from the very thing we're trying to create. Perfectionism tells us that we need to be flawless in order to succeed. But the reality is that progress comes through imperfection. We learn through doing, through failing, through trying again. We grow through action, not through waiting for the perfect conditions. Every failure, every misstep, every moment of imperfection is a lesson. When we embrace imperfection, we open ourselves up to new possibilities. We give ourselves permission to try, to fail, and to evolve. In fact, the most successful people in the world are not the ones who get everything perfect on the first try. They are the ones who are willing to take risks, make mistakes, and keep going. They understand that perfectionism is a trap that keeps us stagnant. They embrace the messiness of the creative process, the bumps in the road, and the inevitable failures. They know that these imperfections are not obstacles to success. They are the stepping stones. Let me be clear, striving for excellence is different from striving for perfection. Excellence is about doing your best, giving your all, and pushing the limits of what's possible. It's about being proud of the work you create, but also being able to look at it and say, I did my best with what I had, and I'm still growing. Perfectionism, on the other hand, is a relentless pursuit of an ideal that doesn't exist. In that pursuit, we miss out on the richness of the journey. We miss out on the process of learning, evolving, and creating something real. Perfectionism also undermines our relationships with others. When we believe that we need to be perfect to be loved or accepted, we create a barrier between ourselves and those around us. We hide behind walls of perfectionism, afraid to let people see the messy parts of our lives. But real, authentic connection happens when we allow ourselves to be imperfect. It's when we share our struggles, our flaws, and our vulnerabilities that we invite others in. We create a space where people feel safe to be themselves, flaws and all. And it is in that space that we build deep, meaningful relationships. The key to moving beyond perfectionism is to shift our mindset. Instead of striving for an unattainable ideal, we must learn to embrace our imperfections. We must give ourselves permission to try, to fail, to learn, and to grow. We must trust that our worth is not tied to our ability to be perfect. Our worth comes from showing up, from being authentic, and from doing the best we can in the moment. We must stop measuring our success by how flawless we are and start measuring it by how far we've come, how much we've learned, and how much we've dared to try. First, let's understand what perfectionism really is. At its core, perfectionism is a mindset rooted in fear. It's the belief that in order to succeed, you have to be flawless. Anything less than perfect is not good enough. It's the desire to control every outcome, to avoid any hint of failure, and to always present a curated version of yourself and your work to the world. Perfectionism doesn't leave room for mistakes. It doesn't leave room for growth. And it certainly doesn't leave room for vulnerability, the very thing we need to achieve our big dreams. In many ways, perfectionism is a way of shielding ourselves from judgment, criticism, and the possibility of failure. We think that if we just get everything right, we'll be safe from the sting of rejection or from feeling inadequate. But here's the problem. Perfectionism is a lie. It's an impossible standard. No matter how hard we try, we can never reach perfection because it doesn't exist. It's a moving target. Every time we think we've reached it, something new pops up, and we're back to the beginning. Perfectionism keeps us spinning in circles, paralyzed by the fear of not measuring up, never taking action because we feel it's never quite good enough to share with the world. But perfectionism isn't just an obstacle in our minds. It also impacts how we live and work. It can become a barrier to taking risks, trying new things, and pushing past the fear of failure. It keeps us in a state of constant overthinking. You know what I mean? Endlessly tweaking a project, agonizing over the details, or waiting for the perfect moment to launch an idea or make a decision. It convinces us that unless everything aligns perfectly, the outcome will be disastrous, so we delay and avoid. The result is that we fail to act, and in failing to act, we fail to move closer to our dreams. Here's the key thing to understand. Perfectionism is about control, not progress. It's about keeping things so tightly held together that we fail to take the necessary risks required to make progress. It's about believing that we must have all the answers before we can even begin. But the truth is, dreams are rarely realized in a linear or controlled way. They evolve, they grow, and they require flexibility. Embracing imperfection means giving ourselves the freedom to fail, to make mistakes, and to keep going. Progress isn't about perfection, it's about learning, adapting, and moving forward step by imperfect step. We are constantly faced with the opportunity to choose. Do we step into the arena of our lives with everything we've got, even if it feels like we don't have all the answers? Or do we retreat into the safety of what we know, letting fear dictate our every move? It's never easy. It's never comfortable. But if we allow ourselves to be ruled by perfectionism or the fear of failure, we deny ourselves the chance to truly live, to truly grow, and to make the impact we were born to make. So here's what I want you to remember. Your dreams are worth the risk. Every dream, every goal, every aspiration that you carry in your heart deserves your action. It deserves your belief, your effort, and yes, even your mistakes along the way. You will stumble. You will fall. You will have moments when it seems like the world is against you, or that your dream is too big to reach. But here's the thing, your mistakes, your missteps, your imperfections, they are all part of the journey. They are the very things that will guide you toward the breakthrough you've been waiting for. The most successful people in the world, the ones who inspire us, the ones we look up to, are not the ones who've never faced failure or who've never felt uncertain. They are the ones who dared to step forward even when they were afraid. They are the ones who pushed through the discomfort, who showed up despite the voices in their heads telling them they weren't good enough, who let go of the need for everything to be perfect. And in doing so, they created something extraordinary, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, authentic, and deeply meaningful. So as you leave here today, I challenge you to ask yourself, what's one small step you can take toward your big dream today? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be a step forward. That's all it takes to start. You don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the next step. And when you stumble, which you will remember that falling is not failure. Falling is part of the process. Getting up again is what matters. And no matter how many times you fall, you will always rise again. So let's rise together. Let's stop waiting for the perfect moment. Let's stop trying to make everything flawless. Let's embrace the messiness of life, the imperfections of our journey, and the strength that comes from showing up as our real selves. The world needs our dreams, our passions, and our unique contributions. And if we hold ourselves back because we're waiting for the perfect version of ourselves to appear, we will never make the impact we were meant to make. It's time to step into your greatness. It's time to stop waiting. It's time to begin. I believe in you. I believe in your dreams. And I believe that you are more than capable of achieving them exactly as you are right now. Go out there and make it happen. Your big dream is waiting for you, and the world is ready for what you have to offer. Thank you.